Evening. I'm going to call the June 20th meeting of the Portsmouth City Planning Board to order. Member Coviello is on his way here. He will be late, so I'm going to ask Mr. Bowen to sit in his absence, if you're
Sure.
If Mr. Coviello shows up, which he's expected to do, we won't switch mid-application, but after there's a break, we'll switch back to the regular member if he makes it in time. First item on the agenda is approval of minutes of May 16th, 2024.
So moved.
Second.
I did. My name was misspelled throughout the minutes.
Oops.
If that could be
Well, that's
corrected.
not good.
You want to spell it for the tape?
Bowen.
I thought that's how you spelled it. Thank you. Have that corrected.
And I wasn't here, so I'm going to abstain.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We have determination of completeness, site plan review. Request of Friends of Lafayette House in care of Melanie Mertz as owner for a property at 413 Lafayette Road, requesting site plan review approval. Construct an attached caretaker's unit to the existing residential care facility with the associated site improvements. This property is located on Assessor's Map 230, Lot 23A, and lies within the Single Residence B District. A motion for completeness?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We have a series of public hearings, just as a reminder for everybody. Be a presentation by the proponent, questions by the applicant, public comment in 3 phases. If you wish to speak in the second or third rounds, you must speak in the first round. And all comment comes directly through me and not applicant or any of the planning board members. First item on the agenda for a public hearing is request of Edmund R. St. Pierre as owner for property at 15 Marriott Drive, requesting a conditional use permit from section 10.814 for a detached accessory dwelling unit. This property is on Assessor's Map 292, Lot 167, and lies in the Single Residence B District. Who is here to present this application?
I'm the property owner, Ed St. Pierre. I go by Ed. We're glad to read my letter if you'd like to inform you of.
However you'd like to proceed, you can read it or touch on the high points.
I will just read the letter. I think it kind of explains to the audience or anybody else what's going on here. I'll take any questions if you have them. Okay, so good evening. I've recently moved to Portsmouth from Hampton, New Hampshire. Hampton, New Hampshire, I was able to serve my community as a member of the zoning board over 12 years. I now live in a vibrant neighborhood called Maple Haven. Enjoy the atmosphere. In the process of planning my retirement from my employer. In the process, I've determined that I would like to downsize my current 3-bedroom house. I have conferred with the city on what can be done with the current property. The site contains a separate parcel denoted as A with a 2-stall garage. Note that this was involuntarily merged with the house upon transfer. For the purpose of this application, I present all associated parcels as one lot. I intend to file a voluntary lot merger upon successful acceptance of this proposal. The parcel was previously earmarked for what was the Marriott Drive extension, and it was never needed, declared surplus, and conveyed to my predecessor in title. After conferring with the building and planning departments, we determined that this parcel was suitable for a detached accessory dwelling unit. I currently have a building permit which allows me to expand the current foundation by 5 feet. It's currently 20 by 20. 20 by 25 would be the result. I have proposed a workshop that will replace the right side stall. I'm allowed a half bath. Project will establish the electric, sewer, and water line extension from the current house. I would now like to seek a current use permit to add a second level to contain 1 bedroom, 1 living room, and 1 full bath, along with proper closet space, 12 by 12 deck, and stair access. I would like to defer the left garage workshop to make it a kitchen, as well as the first floor bathroom will be removed, put on the second floor. So, I've designed a smaller scale unit which incorporates the current master bedroom, bath, and living room scale of the current house. Further, I put a suit and tie on the proposed DADU by adding an eyebrow roof line over the first level with the same pitch as the current house. Replacement siding to match the house. Shake detail is added to the eaves of the house and the garage. Metal roof will match the house on the proposed ADU. I've matched the front-facing windows with the front-facing windows of the house. So, I mean, everything should look as one. I look forward to working with the planning board on this proposal. I'd like to build a textbook example of a detached ADU using your standards and guidelines. Further, I welcome inputs and changes that will result in a better project. At this time, I ask for your consideration.
Thank you. Questions of the applicant? Mr. Gregg.
Just had one question. Your term about downsizing, I'm assuming you're aware that you're going to be required to live in?
Yes, I'm actually have this unit designed for myself,
Okay.
or
Yes.
possibly my sister.
That, we're good.
I
Thank
mean,
you.
I was on a zoning board, so I
Yeah,
understand.
I thought so, but the term downsizing, I didn't know whether you meant you were going to move elsewhere and rent both, but.
No.
We're good.
I
Thank
don't. The whole point to the neighborhood
Yep,
is
thank you.
I'd like to stay there in my retirement.
So you're putting a full bath on the second floor. You had mentioned putting a half bath on the first floor.
Yeah, that would go away.
Okay.
In essence, that's why I'm kind of dead in the water with my project at the second until I know that we're adding a second level or not.
Okay.
Currently, I have a permit to do the first level. The roof is shot and needs to be replaced. The siding's shot, needs to be replaced. I mean, it's a 1983 building. I don't think anything has been done aside from vinyl siding, which needs to be replaced.
Okay. Thank you.
On the first floor, are you proposing to renovate part of it into the ADU?
Yes, because of the...
One of the plans showed the entire first floor, but that's no longer part of the plan, correct?
To tell you the truth, I had tried to design, because I originally had a driveway problem, which was resolved in front of the ZBA last month. But based upon that, I tried to design a handicapped accessible first floor so that if you had an ailing parent, or, I mean, the true in-law effect, but that kind of had to go away because of the square footage. I understand I was only allowed 750 square feet. I have a 500 square foot foundation, so I was asked to stay with the one stall. One stall is existing.
Yep.
I'm just making it deeper because I have a Lincoln Town Car, it's 18 feet long. The current garage is only 20 feet, kind of tight.
Yep.
So that's why I'm expanding the garage. And again, this seems to be the best use to clean up that. I mean, it's going to cost a good amount of money to do the improvements. So try to do the right thing. Try to do the right thing by the neighborhood.
Any other questions to the applicant? Thank you. I'm going to open the public hearing. Is anybody here who wishes to speak to, for, or against this application or on Zoom?
There's no one on Zoom.
I'm not going to go all three rounds. If there's nobody who wishes to speak, raise your, if you wish to speak, raise your hand. If not, I'm going to close the public hearing, including anybody on Zoom. I'm going to close the public hearing. What's the board's pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we vote to find the conditional use permit application meets the requirements set forth in section 10.814.62 of the ordinance and adopt the findings of fact as presented. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I will continue and I will vote to grant, make a motion to vote to grant the conditional use permit with the following conditions 2.1 through 2.3. Second.
Any discussion? Yes.
I'm happy to hear that he wants to fit within our new guidelines, and I'm very excited to see how this actually works out based off of, because we talked a lot when we were redoing the ADU ordinance about having a garage that was set back but being taller than the house and how that would all look. So I'm excited to see how this comes out. That's it.
Yes, a lot of discussion about that.
Very
More than
briefly, as stated by the applicant, I think it is in fact a textbook example of the detached ADU.
Yep.
Very well presented.
I think we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you. You are good to go. The request of, next item on the agenda is request of Richard M. and Francois S. Kinney as owners for property located at 89 Cliff Road, requesting an after-the-fact wetland conditional use permit from section 10.1017.50 for violations within the city's 100-foot wetland buffer. A three-season porch, deck, and concrete landing pad were constructed without permits, of which 225 square feet is within the buffer. This property is on Assessor's Map 223, Lot 9, and lies in the SRB district. Who is here to present this application?
I have additional copies of the site plan, which is pretty detailed. Would you like copies to look at as I go through this?
Is it the same that we have digitally?
Yes. Okay. No need? All right.
I think we're good, thank you.
Just need your name and address. Need his name and address.
And if you could state your name and address for the record?
Richard Kinney, 89 Cliff Road.
Thank you.
Would you like me to go through this?
You get to present what you
All right.
propose.
So as indicated, we added a three-season porch adjoining deck. It impacted the wetland buffer. Most of the back of our home, we found out, is a wetland buffer, 4,875 square feet. We intruded 225 square feet onto the wetland buffer. In an effort to mitigate any impact onto the wetland buffer, we have proposed a number of things, worked with the Conservation Commission, and in detail what those are. In front of the three-season porch, the east side, where the water will run off the roof of the three-season porch, we're putting in a dry well, 2 feet wide, 18 inches deep, extending 2 feet to the north and south boundary of the structure of the three-season porch. In addition, we'd already had gravel all around both the three-season porch and the adjoining porch, and in addition, added gravel underneath the three-season porch and the adjoining deck. That's relevant for the runoff from the home itself, where we'll be adding a gutter in the northwest corner of the three-season porch coming down from the roof there, gathering that L, and the water coming to the north from the east side of the home to the north. You'll be able to see that downspout mark there. In addition, on the north side of the house where the roof slopes down, extending the downspout out about 4 feet into larger stone where it'll naturally follow the existing contours of the property, and which provides very effective drainage. In addition, immediately to the east of the drywall, we'll be putting in shrubs. And as you can see down in a little bit of the southeast corner there, that'll be a recessed planting area. There's a natural just a bit of a low-lying area here on the property. Is really very level. There's a bit of a low-lying area though, so we're going to take advantage of that natural low-lying area, put in the recessed planting area. All the details are on the plan that you can see there. And in addition, the entire backyard, which is currently grass, will be planted in microclover. And I think those are all the highlights.
Okay, if you need to point to anything, there's one of these up there. You can use it to highlight on the map on the screen, but that's okay. You did a fine job. Any questions of the applicant? No questions? Well, there you go. Thank you. Going to open the public hearing. If anybody here wishes to speak to, for, or against this application? Or on Zoom?
Still no one.
Did you wish to speak during the public hearing part? Because you don't have to stay at the podium. Yeah.
Oh,
You're
not sure what the protocol is.
You're good. You're good.
This is a little noisy, so, excuse me.
One last call. Is anybody here or on Zoom wish to speak to or against this application? If not, I'm going to close the public hearing. Nobody raising their hand. Public hearing is closed. What's the board's pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion, planning board vote to find the conditional use permit application meets the requirements set forth in section 10.1017.50 of the ordinance and adopt the findings of facts as presented.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Crystal clear.
Yeah.
Clear presentation, detailed presentation with very good backup.
It's unfortunate, but it seems they've taken care of it.
Yep.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Want to keep going?
Yes, I make a motion, the planning board vote to grant the conditional use permit with the following conditions outlined in 2.1.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? You are approved, sir. Thank you. Next on the agenda is a request of Wentworth Senior Living as applicant and MH Wentworth HM for CHRNC INV as owner for property located at 346 Pleasant Street, is requesting a wetland conditional use permit from section 10.101750 to replace an existing wooden fence along the back of the property which abuts South Mill Pond. This replacement project will have approximately 200 square feet of impact within the buffer, with 10 square feet of permanent impact above the ground, with the posts and 500 linear feet of permanent impact from the fence. This property is on Assessor's Map 109, Lot 10, and lies in the General Residence GRB District. Who is here to present this application?
Hey, Madison Abbott with Wentworth Senior Living, 346 Pleasant Street.
Thank you. Go ahead.
So we are hoping to replace about 510 linear feet of fence. Most of that fencing occurs within the 100-foot wetland buffer. The reason for going through the whole permit requirement and not just an exception is that we have about 50 linear feet that are within that 25-foot vegetative buffer. So we are past the point of repairing. I truly believe as we pulled off ivy from the fence, more of it turns out that was part of the structural integrity at this point. Looking to replace. I think the project is pretty straightforward. Installation methods as the least disruptive as possible. We're hand pounding, well, our contractor is hand pounding metal stakes into the ground and then sleeving over with the vinyl posts.
Thank you. Questions of the applicant?
You gave a lot of examples of fencing, but I'm not entirely sure exactly what you're reinstalling in here. I know it's vinyl, but is it picketed? Is it board? Yeah.
So currently we have scalloped, picketed, spaced, and we're replacing in wood right now, and we're replacing with vinyl, same aesthetic.
Okay, so it's the same look.
Yeah.
Okay.
As best as possible. The vinyl solution really is more durable.
Is it shiny?
For a few years.
I have some. I can attest to that. It's been 7 years, and it's kind of dirty now.
And one of the stipulations with the Conservation Commission is that we will prescribe to a regular maintenance plan, pressure washing with water only. Currently, we have the paper attached to the pressure washer. That's the best place to disseminate that information for when our maintenance team actually uses it.
Yes, Greg.
Interesting choice to oppose what the HDC suggested.
So HDC, they did actually approve the vinyl material.
I thought they suggested that you stay in wood.
The Conservation Commission suggested that we explore other options.
Thank you. Okay.
AZEC would have been the first choice, but it is 4 times the cost. That shouldn't be a factor, but as a nonprofit, it's really not our priority to spend almost $200,000 on fencing. So.
I guess my comment would be that, having worked 2 blocks from there, and I was prohibited from putting vinyl trim or AZEC trim on a historic building, I sort of like to see the non-shiny wooden fence, especially since it's public space.
It was our hope that so we do have about 90 feet frontage on Pleasant Street where there's a concrete wall with a wooden fence above that. Eventually, it'll come time to replace that, and we don't intend to change it, as that's really more like public view. We have a lot more foot traffic than at the end of Melcher or Wentworth, where there's 5 or 6 houses.
That's a good point. The front of the property is a higher priority in the
Very,
HDC.
very high vis spot.
Good point. Thank you
So-
for highlighting that.
Just to elaborate a bit more on that point, I felt the same way you did. Obviously, this is not a neighborhood where we typically allow this, but the front of this building has been painstakingly restored and maintained, and there was a total rebuild of the fence in the front. Yeah, it's, the front is definitely more important.
And I think you got City Hall out the window is actually the highest point of real visibility.
Yeah, true, that's important as well, but
Would you be willing to accept that as a condition, that the fence along Pleasant Street remain wood?
Absolutely.
And functionally, this fence you actually need that for your residents, is that not correct? To keep them from falling into the pond?
And more and more of the community has some sort of cognitive impairment as they age. It's just kind of a fact of the aging population at this point. So, in moving forward and looking to the future, having this exterior a little bit more secure than it is, we come with the options of installing more security systems. That inner portion, that's a semicircle, that already has security systems that are fob access for our residents. But it really does delineate the space of this is safe, this isn't, and allows a little bit more of independence and freedom where we struggle with our footprint. It kind of is what it is in Historic District Portsmouth.
just a point of clarification on that stipulation, if someone makes it, the ornamental historic fence, the very large one, that was rebuilt, that was not rebuilt out of wood, but it's very well done. It was built out of AZAC. I remember years ago when it came before us on the HCC. The other wooden fence along the parking area, I think is where you were talking, that is all wood.
On the backs, which parking area?
On the
Yep.
Pleasant, up at Pleasant Street.
So Pleasant Street,
Is it that?
that's Wentworth Street that you're highlighting now.
Yep.
That wood fence, I believe that installation was done in 2013, maybe. I don't have very good records on it. I know that there was a large garden installation done around that point. But unfortunately, the fence has not aged well, and being only 11 years ago, I think there was really a lot of hope that it would have lasted longer, so that's our intention with switching to vinyl and using a product that has a 30-year warranty from the manufacturer.
So are we
Trying to
talking
clarify.
Pleasant Street?
I was just trying to clarify, if someone was going to make a stipulation, that we were very specific as to where we were talking about, that's all.
So
Yeah,
it
and-
is just the
But
Pleasant,
there's
just the Pleasant Street
multiple
frontage
fences.
then?
There's multiple
Fences.
fences on
Yeah.
Pleasant.
And none of this project has anything to do with Pleasant Street.
Right.
So we're not up there yet. That'd be a separate building permit and application.
But to clarify, when I asked the question, maybe I didn't understand it in my own mind, but the wooden fence, when it needs to be replaced, would be replaced with wood along Pleasant Street? Is that,
Yes,
that's what we're talking about,
Yeah.
correct?
in that high visibility area, high
I've already
traffic.
written,
You've got it.
fencing along Pleasant Street will remain the same material that currently exists.
Okay.
That way, if it's not wood.
And when that time comes, that'll be another application and I'll be here again.
Okay. Any other questions of the applicant? Okay, thank you. Open the public hearings. Anybody here or on Zoom who wishes to speak to, for, or against this application? One more call. Anybody here or on Zoom wish to speak to, for, or against this application? I'm going to close the public hearing. It's the board's pleasure. Do you want to proceed with that? Well, we get to, I guess Beth's all set
Beth
to
has
go.
the best
She's-
notes.
I will make a motion that we vote to find the conditional use permit application meets the requirements set forth in section 10.1017.50 of the ordinance and adopt the findings of fact as presented.
I'll second.
Any discussion? I guess the one little small finding is that we did hear about this other fence, so.
I'll just point out, I've actually toured the facility, and it's a beautiful facility, and they do a really good job maintaining it, so. Just make that little
A
plug
historical
in.
name, they
It's a
should.
historical home, and it's beautifully maintained, and it's great.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
I will continue, and I'll make a motion that we vote to grant the conditional use permit with the following conditions, 2.1 and 2.2 included, and add a 2.3 that In the future, any fencing along Pleasant Street will, if replaced, will remain the same material that currently exists.
Second.
Any discussion?
We always welcome visitors if anybody else wants to.
We're not done yet, but we're almost there. No discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
She was out the door.
Carries.
Who's confident?
That was funny.
Two-step process.
Next item on the agenda is a public hearing for the request of the Friends of Lafayette House in the care of Melanie Mertz, owners for property located at 413 Lafayette Road, requesting site plan review approval to construct a attached caretaker's unit to an existing residential care facility with associated site improvements. This property is on Assessor's Map 230, Lot 23A, and lies within the Signal Residence B district. Who is here to present this application?
I am, sir. Joe Coronati, Jones and Beach Engineers. And with me, I have Renee Sullivan, the Executive Director, and Melanie Mertz. She's one of the board members of the Friends of the Lafayette House. The proposed site plan, which is before you, is for a small addition to this existing building. This is located sort of off of Lafayette Road with a Lafayette Road address. It's 413 Lafayette Road, and it's next to Andrew Jarvis Drive, which is the access road to the high school. Building's been there since the mid to late 80s. This group takes care of 12 developmentally disabled adults that live in this building. They have a full-time caretaker. The caretaker lives on the property. The caretaker currently works, the main caretaker works 5 days a week, all day, all night, lives on the property on weekends. They do get the weekends off, but then they have to bring in another weekend caretaker. Unfortunately, there's not 2 spaces for these caretakers to live, so they actually bunk together in the single caretaker unit for the weekends, which is, as you can imagine, not maybe a little too cozy. And so this expansion is really just to add an addition onto this building so that the full-time caretaker would have their own small apartment that they could be in at night for privacy, and on the weekends they wouldn't have to share it with the weekend caretaker. So there's no change to the number of residents that are going to be on the property, and technically really no change to the number of caretakers because they're there already. They're just crammed into one smaller apartment, and this would give them some space to have their own, space on the weekends, basically. There's no change to the utilities. All the utility modifications to this building will be internal. So really no work being done outside, no change to the asphalt, the parking, the driveway, the utilities, really nothing external other than having to modify the walkway to go around the proposed addition and then building the addition. It's a 1-story addition. And we did ask for a host of waivers for that, so we do have a list of waivers in front of you as well.
Questions to the applicant? Yes, ma'am.
I guess I just want to make sure I understand, because I'm having a hard time with the flow of the building, that the doors are sort of in the back that go to the offices. Is that how people actually enter the facility? Because it feels like you're tacking on a room right at the front where people park and would think about walking in, and that's where I'm confused. Can you just walk us through the flow of how people come in and out of the building?
Yes, the main entrance, trying to see, I got to look at my plan and compare it. The main entrance is near sort of the, where the building, it's right in this area here
Okay.
is the main entrance. I'm trying to see the, that's not changing, is it? No, all right. The
site plan shows 2 accesses, one near the addition and one a little bit farther where you just pointed. So is the one farther away the main entrance?
Yeah, so the addition goes on the shorter. This The addition here is on the end of the building that has the boiler room and the storage room
Yeah.
in the architectural, which is on the bottom side. And so that'll be the expansion. That side, it won't alter any of the doorways or the access points into the building. There will be a new entrance to the caretaker's unit, so they can come and go without going into the main hallways.
Does that explain it for you, Beth?
I guess I'm still a little confused, but if they say it's over here, I guess that entrance that you're talking about on the right looks like it goes into an existing unit. That's why I guess I'm
I do agree.
confused.
I do see that. I see what you're saying. I think there's a,
It looks like it goes right into a kitchen. That's what
oh, okay, so that does go.
Okay.
Yeah, there's one on the long wall, and then there's egress doors on either end of the hallway. But see the vestibule on the other side, but that's all basically fenced in and secured, not
Okay.
really only for residents.
I just didn't want it to be confusing for people when they show up based off of where you're putting this.
I think the residents that are here and the visitors that come are probably pretty used to this layout. They tend to stay here for quite a while, and there is only one kitchen in the building, and it looks like that's where you enter the main access.
Thank you.
Any other questions of the applicant? Yes, Bill.
At random times, there's plenty of parking there, but I assume that most of the people that live there don't drive.
I believe that's correct, yes.
But would have visitors on occasions, and you're really not changing the parking in what you're doing?
That's correct. We're not proposing to change it, and we're not increasing the number of residents or caretakers, so I don't think you'll see any change to the parking situation.
Any other questions?
Your waiver request, Article 10, the outdoor lighting, your reasoning says we are proposing any additional lighting. Did you mean to say
I think it was aren't, yeah.
not? or
Yeah,
aren't
sorry. Are not,
proposing
yeah.
any additional lighting?
Correct. No, we're not proposing any change. There's there might be one light over the door of the entrance, like a kind of a residential light, or right next to it, that'll be controlled by the caretakers just to turn on and off, if they leave and want it to see in. There is debate. There is one outside light, but it's I don't think it's in the best of shape, and it's currently covered in vines that are growing up it. So that one may stay, but it may end up going with the addition as well. But no additional lighting other than that
Thank you.
door light.
Any other questions of the applicant? Thank you. I'm going to open the public hearing on this. Anybody here or on Zoom who wishes to speak to, for, or against this application?
Still no attendees.
Very quiet auction tonight.
We have very low attendance today. Our ratings are going to go way down.
Heat or something. One last call. Anybody here or on Zoom who wishes to speak to, for, or against this application? Seeing nobody, I'm going to close the public hearing. Board may proceed with a motion. Were you leaning?
I look around, I wait for someone else.
I'll make a motion. Mr. Chairman, I make the motion, the planning board vote to find the site plan application meets the requirements set forth in the site plan regulations, section 2.9 evaluation criteria, and adopt the findings of facts as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Make the motion to the planning board vote to find the requested waivers will not have the effect of nullifying the spirit and intent of the city's master plan or the site plan review regulations, and to waive the regulations as requested.
Second.
Was there a typo that needed to be corrected in there?
It was in the description. It wasn't in the motion.
Okay. Any discussion? Yes.
I'll just point out that this is a very little addition. It's not really changing the function or how this place works in any way, shape, or form. Therefore, I do agree that the waivers are acceptable and not, those plans and everything are not needed.
Requires a vote of 6 members, so hopefully we won't have any issues. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries with more than 6.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion the planning board vote to grant the site plan approval with the following conditions. Conditions to be satisfied subsequent to final approval of site plan, but prior to the issuance of a building permit or the commencement of any site work or construction activity as stated in 3.1.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? You are approved. Thank you. Next item is 806 US Route 1 bypass, requesting an amended site plan approval and a second one-year extension to the site plan approval originally granted June 23rd, 2022. Who is here to present this application?
Thank you. I'm Alex Ross from Ross Engineering. I prepared the plans. I'm here with the builder, Dave Grzybowski. This is actually a very simple one. If you recall, we were just before this board a month ago for the abutting site, where there's a lot of tricky off-site drainage that runs through the site. So it's the same as this site. And if you look on the existing conditions plan, you can see a drain line shoots right underneath the existing building, continues over, and then goes over and underneath the abutting building. So a lot of design options, review with the city and NHDOT, a lot of that flow comes from the bypass. So there was some extra time required there. But we just got 822 approved, so now we showed those slight changes on this plan set. So we're before you to get that amended plan set and extension approved. In the staff memo, the planning department recommended this project be approved. There were 2 conditions which we're happy to agree to. So we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions to the applicant?
Yeah, last month, I had asked the question, what will be the use of this property?
Yeah, so right now, this property is city tobacco, and it's just in a small building. So he wants to move it next door, build a larger building, so that this building could be rented out and used for something else.
Okay, so you have you're not going to use it. It would be potentially rented out or made available.
Right.
Right. Yeah, at this time, once
Could
we
you
get a
get
move.
your name, sir? I'm sorry.
Sorry, Dave Grzybowski. At this time, once we get a move from one building to the other, then they decide on what to do with the building and then come back before the board for any change of use or if any other business went in there.
Okay, thank you.
But at this time, it's going to be just vacant and empty after.
But you're adding a cooler to the back of it?
That's the walking, yeah, that was the addition that was planned to square off the back of the building. So that will still be done to make the square footage, because it was approved.
So you must be,
Future use, if somebody goes in there, yes, they'll have a walk-in cooler on the back of the building.
okay.
That was my question.
Well, you can continue. Sorry.
You did good.
Any other questions to the applicant? guess I'm still not clear about the use, so the proposed approval would be for retail, general retail?
Right, that's what the original site plan was for.
Okay,
But that's not
Yes,
what it was
Greg.
Question for
previously.
the chair.
sure.
We've given 2 extensions already, right?
This would be
This
the
is the
second.
I think this is the second, yeah.
Okay, I was just reading 22 to 23, 23 to 24. Never mind. Okay, thank you.
Good, potential good catch. Good to check it. Any other questions of the applicant before we have the public hearing, then talk about details? No other questions? We can open the public hearing to this packed room. Anybody here or on Zoom who wishes to speak to, for, or against this application?
0.
Your ratings are going down.
Last call. Anybody on Zoom, I guess, would be the only place. Close the public hearing. We have a staff recommendation.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we vote to find that the site plan application meets the requirements set forth in the site plan regulations, section 2.9 evaluation criteria, and adopt the findings of fact as presented.
Second.
Any discussion?
These are pretty simple modifications, so we've already looked at this. I feel like multiple times because they're side by side.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Going to make a motion to vote to grant the amended site plan approval and a second one-year extension with the original conditions as approved on June 23rd, 2022, and the following conditions, 2.1 and 2.2.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? You are approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have a zoning hearing. I guess we might as well move right into it. We have a public hearing on the proposed amendments to Chapter 10, Article 5A of the Character-Based Zoning, Section 10.5A 43.33 regarding building and story heights of the zoning ordinance of the City of Portsmouth pursuant to 10.150 of the zoning ordinance. I'm sorry, but there were some typos picked up just in the last couple of days that went out earlier this morning. I hope everybody had a chance to look at those.
Mr. Chair,
Go to my email to open it.
I got that instruction this morning too. It was around 10 o'clock, and it also asked to look at other sections of the zoning ordinance so that we'd have better knowledge, and I unfortunately didn't have time, and at least for me, I don't know how other board members feel, but I think zoning changes some of the most important things we do, and I'm not prepared personally to vote on this tonight. I don't know how other board members feel, but if I had my druthers, we'd postpone to give us all time to look at it carefully. So that's just where I'm at right now.
Okay, I appreciate your position, and you know, again, it's unfortunate it went out. This is a modification to something that was done last August, so it's not brand new. There was a question about whether or not there was a requirement to actually have workforce housing as a part of the proponent's application in order to qualify for the additional height story of building. That was corrected, and then in the course of looking at it, there were some other typos. The reason it was my request that board members have a chance, if they could, to look at those other sections was the community space definitions are probably not what you would think unless you've looked at it before, which it includes things like plazas, pedestrian passageways. It's not green space. It's not a place to walk your dog. It's much more than that. So that's the reason. If folks had time, that was my request, that they have a chance to look at it. But you know, you can only do what you're comfortable doing. So I hear what you're saying. Yes, Greg?
Honestly, have to admit that I didn't even catch the email until Jim just pointed it out, and I'm looking at 2 different versions of it. So, yeah, I didn't get a chance to review the newest one either. I apologize. It was a day.
Yes.
I just like to, so it was brought to my attention as well that the question was whether or not the city council intended when we made these changes initially, whether we intended if you were going to take advantage of the incentives, if it was meant to be mixed residential and non-residential. Because what came out of the discussion was whether or not they could have mixed use, but it would all be commercial and none of it would be residential. And so when I was asked that question, I said it was my thought from listening to the council when this was all talked about, is that they intended, if you were going to take advantage of incentives, that it needed to be mixed use residential and non-residential uses. So we were trying to just clarify that in this section, because it was brought to our attention it wasn't as clear as what the intention was. So that's all we're trying to do with this change. I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
The other thing, there were things, the original text had and/or, which could be confusing. It was meant to be a possible mix of building types. So, the other thing that I noticed in going through it was the 50% requirement for community space, which is rather high. Council didn't ask us to look at that. It struck me as kind of a big ask and sort of a detriment to the incentive itself. So I thought we might want to talk about whether we'd want to suggest to council reducing that. But I'm not going to lead this conversation any more than I already have, because I'm not hearing much from the other board members.
I think that's a good catch that I wouldn't have seen unless you pointed it out, so I would probably scale that down as well.
I was thinking about half of that, which would be more consistent with other sections of our ordinance. Yes, Bill?
So are we talking about the steam factory? And if so,
no.
Last time we had a
No, we're not talking about that.
design review which vested the zoning.
This wouldn't apply. So this is the properties that can qualify for this section of the zoning are very limited. The incentive overlay districts, which the steam factory is one of those, does not apply. The West End part of the downtown, out by Hannaford and all that is excluded. You have to have a 1 acre minimum. You have to be in the CD4, CD4W, or CD5, and not in an incentive overlay. So the McIntyre property would qualify. The Citizens Bank property would qualify. Other properties might qualify with a consolidation, but there are a few properties that would meet the criteria. Yes, Greg.
I love your explanations because I would have had a similar question. So, I've talked about this before because a little more broad explanation to inform us what we're making a decision on, I think might be a good idea for the next time we consider this.
Was your question answered, Bill?
I think so.
Okay.
I need to.
It cannot apply to the steam factory. The steam factory is specifically excluded. That entire section, the North End incentive, is all excluded.
Okay.
Excluded based on zoning and lot size, is that right?
Well, the entire North End incentive overlay district is excluded, all of those properties.
Okay, gotcha.
So even if they consolidated all of them into one, which would be quite a feat, you still couldn't qualify.
Understood.
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to speak about the 50% community space. I think we had a lot of discussion about that at the Land Use Committee when this was first being proposed. And I think we were because of the density and the size of the 1 acre plus or more than 1 acre it could be lots, that trying to get as much community space out of giving the density was, I think, very important. So I would not be in favor of trying to change that at this time.
I get the point. One of the clarifications, you might notice that building types include houses, and there has been some discussion that the Hill, for example, is a non-conforming situation. You couldn't build that in the downtown under our existing zoning. You could theoretically build it on the Citizens property, with houses. So this could qualify for that type of development on that site. With a 50% community space allocation, I think that makes that more difficult to do, but yes.
Can I ask you a question? This may be a question for you, Mr. Chairman, or you, Peter, or you, Council Moreau. The council could take action regardless of whether the planning board takes action. The planning board has it within their purview. Can the city council act in the absence of the planning board acting?
I think they have to make a recommendation whether it's up or down, but then we can act once that's done.
The zoning ordinance does require this board to make a recommendation. That's all it is.
Okay.
So we're talking about a recommendation to council.
Right.
I'm
It's raining.
personally, I would be okay without touching the community space issue now and maybe revisiting it in the future, but the other sections were strategically much more important, and especially with the goal for workforce housing.
Mr. Chairman, given that this is primarily a clarification and a cleanup, I'd look to call the question.
We can make a motion if you like.
Sure. I think I'd like to make a motion to recommend that the city council take up the new section as amended. Is that a clear enough motion?
As sent out this morning.
As most recently amended as today.
Yeah.
Yes.
To the planning board.
So,
Wait,
Is
we
there
need
a
a
second?
second. We need a second.
Second.
Okay. Now, discussion.
so I'm not, I get lost in CD 1s and 4s and such. What we're really trying to do is to say that in certain parcels which are more than an acre or more, that this group would have the authority to grant an extra layer of height, an extra floor, in exchange for 5 or 10% being controlled rent price, and 50% being green space.
Correct.
Community space.
Not green space.
Well-
No, it's very different. It's very different. It's community space, which, I mean, we can bring it up.
It's defined in here.
Some of them are listed in the text itself, I think. Pedestrian passageways, wide pedestrian sidewalks, pedestrian arcades, pocket park, playground, public observation deck, and there's a requirement that it include a plaza or square of at least 5,000 square feet per acre. So none of those are green. They're all hardscape, but they're community space. It's like, think of the
Earth Garden.
Market Garden building behind, that McNabb just did, where all those tables are. That's community space.
And there's no discretion here on a proposal that comes in that conforms to those conditions?
It's a conditional use permit, so there is discretion involved, and there's back and forth. There are requirements. If an applicant came in meeting all these requirements, that takes away a lot of discretion. We're supposed to grant it.
So
Where the push and pull would come is you'd look at a particular proposal with those various things that I read, and you might think, well, the plaza should be larger, and you don't need this pedestrian passageway that you put in the back to qualify. That's just going nowhere, so it needs to be over here. That's the sort of discussion that the board would have if this, if an application came forth under this.
And if the objective were to have the maximum amount of potential workforce housing, this says half the property goes to public purpose, which may be something that we would be surprised to find out what public purpose was.
The public purpose of the community space?
Well, the community space, yeah.
Well, community space it's open to the public. I guess I'm not following what the question might be.
I think the average person thinks in terms of green. I don't, I may be wrong.
It depends on where you are. This is mostly oriented to the downtown areas. It's not the downtown overlay district itself specifically. It's a little bit more than that, but it's basically the downtown areas. Right? Yes, Greg. And then Jim.
I 100% support the clarification, which I think was the original idea of the first version, that it's about residential, not just mixed use, because that was absolutely needed. I'm just a little, I don't see, those of you that work in planning know these zoning sections like the back of your hand, CD4, CD4W, CD5 character, this, that, and everything. It would be really simply nice to see the normal little Peter overlay that shows us what properties are we really talking about. You mentioned McIntyre and maybe one other one, but I just don't know what they are. Citizens. And I mean, I don't want you to regurgitate all of them because you might miss one, but I think that's our concern. I don't know which properties this will affect. That's my only concern.
Understood. It's not a new topic though. Those aren't changing. None of the applicable properties are changing in any way.
I forget which ones they were when we changed this last time, I guess.
Key is over an acre.
Over an acre, which is huge. And if it's downtown and over an acre, that's bloody huge. I get it.
Yeah, there's very few that can qualify.
And 50% community space, that's going to be a burden to the developer, but I like it. Like you said, I mean, it's a burden to the developer.
Well, I just want to
if we
speak to
can
that.
get it,
This is why I was questioning the 50. I mean, if we are in fact trying to encourage workforce housing, and at the same time we're burdening the developer, we're not encouraging workforce housing, are we?
I think it's too high. I think it's a big ask. It's not. It's going to preclude
50% of an acre for community space, and these are expensive features. When you playgrounds, observation decks, arcades, parks, sidewalks, these are very expensive features to cover 50% of an acre.
I would just look at the acquisition cost per square foot of property of an acre or bigger.
It can be up on a building, so it could be like a roof deck.
Which you didn't
So
pay
it's
for.
not,
you
you're
get
not
it
taking
for free.
footprint necessarily, but it's a lot.
Yeah, and I just thought some of the purpose of this change was to and clearly it is, and workforce housing is B. I think we're in one motion, we're encouraging and discouraging workforce housing in the same action, is what it feels like to me unless I'm misunderstanding something.
Well, here's where we are.
Good question.
Let me just explain something. The motion and the second that we have is basically to correct the mistake. I'm just going to call it a mistake because it just wasn't worded correctly to include workforce housing with no other changes to what was adopted last August. The council asked us to take care of that. I think we should probably act on that, whether we vote it up or down. I'm inclined to vote it up. We can come back to this, and maybe we should come back to this, because the topic of workforce housing is certainly a big topic. And there are some other things that I have on my list of agenda items to talk about regulatory-wise after we get through this. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, would it help the planning board if I amended the motion, if the second agreed to share with the council there was a discussion about the percentage of community space, and that we would recommend that be looked at by them as they consider future amendments to this section?
Do you agree?
Second.
I think there was a second. I just want to make sure the second
I think
agreed with that.
he's agreeing with your change. Maybe.
Yeah.
I seconded your original
Okay.
motion, and
So in the transmittal of our potential approval, we could
Yeah.
mention we
can
had
do
a
that.
discussion.
I think that's logical, given the conversation that's happening. Andrew, you had?
Yeah, I think we have a couple different big picture objectives with this revision. One of them being to achieve a better public and community space result. And we've seen some projects that have included wider pedestrian sidewalks, and it drives me up a wall that is their community space, because even if they have a wider sidewalk, they are not necessarily utilizing them for public or community space. Like, there are no tables, there are no benches, there are no amenities to it that necessarily dictate or depict or welcome the public beyond what a regular sidewalk would. Secondarily, I think the community space objective is to break up the massing of some of the larger projects that we have seen in the past couple of years, where they are trying to utilize the parcel to their best of their ability and obviously drive economic return, but at the same time it has created sort of that congestion point. And if we look at the north end, we have 3 different construction projects going on, and when those are completed, it will have a substantial amount of mass with a very little amount of community space that is really depictable to the naked eye or the average person. So that's one objective. And then we have the workforce housing objective, which, as we are saying, it may handicap or hamstring a developer beyond what they would otherwise entertain doing for the development. It sort of sets that threshold really high so that they have to at least come here and ask. And I think that's what we originally stated with having our hand on the wheel type of metaphor, like using that discretion. And when it says 50%, are we going to end at 50%? Almost never, but it still allows them to come before us, and now we have that discussion and hopefully have a negotiation in real time about what they end up with. So I'm of the mindset that 50%, yeah, it's pretty daunting, and certainly something that a developer is going to have to hem and haw over. But at the very least, it may create either more imaginative solutions, it may create better development programming, whether that's community space or workforce housing wise. And at the end of the day, maybe they'll come to us with more than one option, or alternatively, they'll come to us before they make a full submittal, and we can have a discussion-based conversation where we can hopefully come up with a better solution, and then they proceed to an application. So in my mind, I think that type of threshold, yeah, although intimidating, could still be really functional and utilized well if the developers are playing proactively. So that's kind of where my head goes. And the last thing I'll say is, it says, as further described and depicted in figure 10.45A4510. When we get these revisions, it, for me at least, speaking personally, it helps have like a cohesive view of all of these considerations. So if we have the figures and we have the entire zoning ordinance in front of us, whether it's printed or whatnot, it just helps kind of get that full big picture, so that when we're discussing it like we are tonight, it's a complete image in my head, rather than partially baked revisions and red lines.
All understood. I will come back to the fact this is not a change in any of that. So we actually considered all this last year, made a recommendation, council adopted it. So if this was a brand-new amendment, I think, and staff would have done this, I know they would have put all the graphics in
Sure.
and linked it all together. I think we do have an obligation as board members to just refresh our minds if we can't remember certain things. Picking up on what you just said, Andrew, though, if a second version of this happens, the first sentence about community space could be changed to say at least a smaller amount and up to 50%, 35%, whatever the number might be, but to have a provision where the applicant is required to show both and to have a discussion with the board. That could give a range of possibilities, and we could have, some idea about what the options were, which is what you were saying without saying it in the same
and where
way.
we lack in design review, I feel as though having those options or alternates may provide, again, a discussion base, or it will force that developer to not just think in a singular lane and allow them to come up with a couple different meshes of sorts. And maybe I'm thinking too optimistically or naively.
No, you're not. By the way, I'm not suggesting that we make that sort of a change tonight.
Yeah,
I'm just talking about, generally speaking, we could do that in the future.
Yeah.
If we wanted to, or something like this. It would be more, it would allow the planning board to engage more in planning too, and having a back and forth with an applicant. Yes, Jim?
This may be a perfectly legitimate and logical step for us to take, but again, with 9 hours' notice, I have to vote no because I'm just not prepared to vote yes, so that's where
Okay.
my head's at.
That's your right. So we have, is there any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to, Andrew brought up a good point about those projects in the north end, and I don't think they're an acre, those projects.
No, but in aggregate, there are certainly an acre's worth of projects that have a variety of community space implications. And on top of that, we have like the greenway that will eventually be done. And so those are the bigger picture type of community spaces that I'm talking about, where it doesn't necessarily help anything just to have wider sidewalks individually.
Yeah. What do you think those would look like if they were offering 50% community space?
Oh, I think you can go to a variety of places in Portsmouth, or take Newburyport, for example. You have a lot of very old and historic public plazas, and they're frequented. And if last weekend was a good example as ever, where that's where meeting places happen, and these community spaces are created to create run-ins of sorts and create effectively alternative sitting spaces. And so, whether it's benches or other public features and bike racks, things of that nature, it's better than just wider sidewalks, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I'm speaking very personally now.
I just think those projects down there specifically, like if they were doing 50%.
But I think if you actually took all of those projects together, starting with the parking garage, what's 2 being built now, 3 being built now, there's going to be a park next to that parking garage between one of those structures. It's all being used for construction laydown right now, but there's actually going to be a park there in the end, once all of those are built. So that is sort of long-term vision that.
Yeah, that was certainly a more specific example.
The city
I think
already owns the property.
that was part of the land swap, so that was kind of a separate consideration.
But if you were to take those all together, as you're talking
And that's
about
what I'm saying,
acre
in
lots,
an
that would
aggregate,
be the
yeah.
50%, right? We got it a different way, but I think that would probably equate.
What this talks about, commercial alley would be community space. If somebody proposed something like commercial alley through a project, that would be community space. A roof deck, obviously, that doesn't take footprint. The passageway through the building at the steam factory, depending on how that were done, that could qualify as a passageway. That's what a pedestrian passageway is. So it's a more urban, it's very common in Europe and in England, in the UK. It's a very common way of providing more private space from the street front. You go into a more quiet courtyard experience inside the block. But again, we'll get into a huge urban design discussion here. Yes?
Just very quickly, I'll support the motion because we are correcting, some minor language changes here. I do believe there is a need for us to look closer at this in the future. There are things in here that aren't even red, that are black, that, we're not supposed to, that don't make sense to me. And, but I can support the correction of this document to eliminate a lot, to clarify the language, and I think the changes are minor, but I do hope that we come back to this on a more global consideration. And
If there are things there that don't make sense to you, we have to come back to it.
yeah,
So let's plan on doing that.
I'm happy to bring up the 50% question at City Council and get a discussion with them going. And maybe there'll be a vote to recommend it back to us again, if that's what it results from.
and I don't mean don't make sense to me that I don't understand. I understand what they say, but I don't think that they are helping.
I wasn't demeaning you.
Okay.
Appreciate your comment. Yes, Bill?
So what you really want to have is a discussion about the trade-off of space, community space, and housing. But with an arbitrary 50%, you limit yourself in being able to have that discussion. And
Personally, I think so. But I think for tonight, I'd leave it and have this discussion as we just discussed.
And actually, the 5 and 10% arbitrarily limit you on the other side. So
correct.
Well, I'd argue with that because they actually are in line with the RKG report that we have right now. They actually, those numbers are we did not have anything. We didn't have it at the time, but we were right. Just like to point that out because we do have that information now. We've actually have a very long report with all the data, and I think in the end we were right. And I was a little shocked when I made that realization. It's like we did something right without actually having the information. It's great.
It has to happen once in a while.
Yeah, once in a while.
We have a motion and a second. Does everybody understand the motion with the amendment to talk about the community space? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye, or nay?
Nay.
2 opposed. Thank you. So recommendation to council. You've made it in time for almost the very end.
Other business.
The fastest planning board meeting ever?
It is pretty fast.
Actually, the change
Knew
in
you were on
zoning
the
took
way.
the longest.
I missed the address.
We're just stretching it out, waiting for you.
Excuse my tardiness.
So now, Member Coviello will sit for what little remains. Thank you, Mr. Bowen. We have a request by 325 Little Harbor Road for a 1-year extension on their wetlands conditional use permit. They submitted an additional paper copy of the letter that was in our packet, basically explaining they're having difficulties with getting their permits for the bridge.
Imagine that.
Yeah. So,
Sounds like it's coming back.
any discussion? Would somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion, vote to grant a 1-year extension to the planning board approval of the conditional use permit to July 20th, 2025.
Second.
Any discussion?
I mean, it's completely understandable. I mean, new bridge, new waterway, new everything.
It's a big.
In 1 year? Are you serious? No way.
Corps of Engineers.
Yeah, them too.
Complex project.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Extension is granted. B and C are combined. So in the process of going through this amendment we just talked about with the legal department, there is a desire to go through our site plan and subdivision regulations that haven't had attention for some time. And the legal department would like to have a meeting with interested planning board members. I'm suggesting possibly a subcommittee of 3 to do that, but it's not a requirement. It's a busy time of year. So anybody who would like to volunteer to assist with that, you can do so now or email.
Be happy to volunteer.
Oh, thank you, because I just can't.
Tony and Bill. Okay, we have 2 volunteers. I'll proceed to set that up. And the last thing, the master plan scope, there'll be a draft probably going out to the board members shortly for a proposed RFQ, much in line with what the city did for the Sherburne School. Get the conversation going. It hasn't been to the legal department yet, hasn't been anywhere other than the subcommittee and then this board, and we'll get the process started. That's all I have. And with that, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
I was wondering if I could request, Mr. Bowen and I were at a housing conference a couple weeks ago, and the assistant mayor spoke. And
I was there.
Oh, that's right. And I'm sorry about that. She said the council collected some data on new housing, and they looked at the number of students that came out of some of that new housing. And I'm wondering if that data is available for this board, as I'm sure we're going to see a lot of residential projects come before us.
It's the Parsons Woods, West End, and we got 2 students out of that we designated to Little Harbor. That's what he's talking about. That's what she was referring to.
I'm sure we can get you that if it came from Zach. Sure.
And
Yeah,
I'm
it came
wondering-
from Zach, yeah.
And I'm wondering if there's possible any data on calls for service from either police or fire in those as well.
We can certainly find out. Peter, do you mind scribbling that down?
Okay.
We'll find it out.
Thank you.
You know, Karen looks at me, I'm like, yeah,
Pushing
I
to
know.
adjourn. Sorry.
Sorry, I was a little quick with the gavel. Being mindful of folks. Summer evening, even though it's not quite summer, it's very close.